Welcome to part 2 of your Excel videos. This is a remake of the original, just to add in one step that I unfortunately forgot. I apologize. The purpose of this video is to show you how to find the time average of 3 trials, or many trials, or how many ever trials. Number 1. Number 2 is to help you calculate the time uncertainty. And the next is to look at what can you do with your uncertainties if you are modifying your time averages. Essentially, we're looking at how to enter functions into cells. First, let's start with the time average from your Pendulum Lab. What we need to do is we need to find the average of all 3 of these trials. To enter any function, we start off with an equal sign. You simply type an equal sign in. Excel has a bunch of formulae that you can choose, including financial, logical, math trig, etc. But you can also type them in yourself. I prefer to type them in because Excel displays them for you. I typed in AV for average and notice the average pops up here. Click, and now Excel tells me I need to input some numbers. You don't have to input them, you can just select them on your spreadsheet. So I'm going to select all 3 of these points. I close the brackets. Notice I have the closed brackets around the average function and press enter. There is my time average for trials 1, 2, and 3. If you want to copy the same function for all of these cells, what you can do is you first select this cell over here that you just entered the function. You hover your mouse to the bottom right hand corner, and once you hit that little box in the corner, you see a cross. So before it looks like this, now it looks like a black cross. You click, drag down, voila. One step, it calculates everything for you. What Excel does is it copies this function and it uses the subsequent values going down the column. So Excel is smart like that. For example, if I click on this cell and look at the cells that it was referring to, it goes down row by row. Now we need to modify these guys to display the right, they display the right number of significant figures, so this column is good to go. These are my time averages. Next up, I'm going to calculate the average time divided by 10, because going back to our Pendulum Lab, remember these times were recorded for 10 periods. That means I have to divide my time averages by 10. I'm going to give this a new column a name. I'm going to call this TAV divided by 10. And because I'm going to use this column quite a bit to do my plotting of my data, I'm going to make this a darker color so I can remember it. Entering now a function. I'm going to divide all of these time averages by 10. Again, I start with the first row function, starting with the equal sign. And I'm only going to divide by 10. So I can simply click on this cell, which is E4, and I'm going to press divide /10, enter, and it divides my time average by 10 right away. So to copy all of these functions down below, I don't have to copy and paste. All I need to do is hover my mouse to the bottom right hand corner where my little cursor turns into a black cross. Click and drag. Now I have divided everything here by 10. Next up is I need to correct for the right amount of significant figures. So it seems like I need about 2 to 3. But remember, correct myself. We need to first look at our uncertainties before we round up our time averages. So let me do that later. Let's calculate uncertainties first. So to calculate the uncertainties of my time average prior to the dividing by 10, I'm going to name this TAV UNC for uncertainty. I will use this not as much. So I'm going to give this a darker shade of blue. Now I'm going to calculate my uncertainties for my time average only. Recall that to find your uncertainty of a range of data is max minus min divided by 2. So I'm going to, again, enter a function. I'm going to class equals. I could just click on the max minus the min manually myself, or if I have a whole bunch of data, I can get Excel to do that for me. All I have to do is, well, first, let me put in some brackets just to close things off. I'm going to type in max. Excel has a max function. What it does, it helps me search for the maximum number in a array of numbers. So I'm going to go to this row and select T1 all the way to T3 and get Excel to determine the maximum number for me, even though I can do it myself. But for big array, large number of trials, it's going to be hard to do. That's max. Minus the min, I'm going to type in min, and again, Excel knows the function min. I click double click on min. I'm going to select the same array of data from B4 to D4. I close the brackets for my minimum. I close the brackets for the top function, which is max minus min. I'm going to punch in slash or divide by 2, and that gives me my uncertainty. I can then drag my uncertainty down. Remember, bottom right corner, black cross, click and drag. Here are my time average uncertainties. Because our time average uncertainties need to be rounded to 1 decimal place, I'm going to right click here. When it's all selected, format cells, and it seems like all of my uncertainties are within the 10th decimal place, so I'm going to round everything up to the 1 decimal place. If you ever have an uncertainty that's rounded that has a different place value, say you have to round it to the hundreds, you can always customize, you can always just work with 1 cell at a time. Let's say I might want to change this to display 2 decimal places or more, then I can adjust for the 1 cell manually myself, but that depends on the uncertainties that you have, okay? Mine uncertainties just worked out very well, and they're all rounded to the 10th place for 1 significant figure. As a result, my time averages here also need to be rounded up to the same number of place value, the same place value as my T average uncertainty. So let's do that now. Right click, format, it's going to be to the 10th place, so 1 decimal place. Okay, there it is. Time average rounded up depending on the uncertainties. If you have learned, or if you had the lesson with us on what to do with error propagation, this may make a little bit sense to you. If you haven't, you just have to take it to heart that because we are, in the end, plotting our data based off of 1 period, not 10 periods, 1 period, which means this is going to be the data we'll be using. If that's going to be the data that we're using, we also need this data's appropriate uncertainty, which means we cannot use these ones. These ones are the uncertainties for the time average. They are not the uncertainties for the time average divided by 10. To account for that, what I need to do is I just need to divide all of these uncertainties by 10 to get the uncertainty of T average divided by 10, or the time of 1 period. I will label this T av divided by 10 UNC, not UBC. I wish it was UBC. No, I'm just kidding. UNC, uncertainty. Making this a little larger, I can just drag the column like this to make it smaller, bigger, wider. And I'm going to give this a darker color because I will use this quite often for my Y error bars, which we'll talk about later. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I will also divide my T average uncertainties by 10, similar to how I've done it for the T average, or the time for 1 period. Again, equals the T av uncertainty. Click on this. Slash for divide by 10, enter, there it is. Now again, to apply it to all my cells, I click on the bottom right corner, drag and drop, or drag and let go. Again, I need to adjust for these errors. I need to adjust for these significant figures. So it seems like all of these can be rounded to the 10th place, or the 100th place, my bad, except this guy over here. This guy is 0.0095, but the interesting thing is this is going to round up to the 1 anyways. This is also going to round up to 0.01 because the 5 rounds the 9 up to the 1, which means if I display this as 2 decimal places, my uncertainties will all be rounded correctly. If this wasn't a 5, let's say that was a 4, then it will be a different scenario. Actually, we can even see if this is the case. Let me just display this in more decimal places just to double check. And checking, oh, it is indeed 0.0095 and not 94 or something else. Otherwise, I have to do this differently. So I'm going to select all of these. I'm going to put them to the 100th place value, That's 2 decimal places. Okay. Here are my time average divided by 10 uncertainties, the uncertainty for one period. I will also adjust the t average values here based off of my uncertainties, which is to the hundreds place. Again, right click, format cells, number, 2 decimal places. Okay. And this is the data that we will use to make our first graph. A recap of on what we did. Essentially, in this video, I showed you how to make functions in your cells. We made the t average, we calculated for the averages, we looked at how to answer a custom function, we looked at how to enter max-min functions, and in the next video, we're going to look at how to graph all these values. Hope you got something out of this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time on Excel Part 3. Bye now.